Welcome to the Nonprofit Report, your update on nonprofit organizations, issues, and leaders. I'm your host, Mark Oppenheimer, and today I am absolutely delighted to introduce to you the team of Chicago Sinfonietta, the daringly different team at Chicago Sinfonietta, including Sidney Jackson, the CEO of the Sinfonietta, Maestra Mei-Ann Chen, the music director of the Sinfonietta, and Wendy Lewis, Chair-Elect and founder and CEO of Wendy Lewis, LLC, who has a fabulous career. We're going to talk with you, Wendy, about how your career informs your work at the Sinfonietta. But let's start with you, Sidney. Let's just jump right in. It's no secret that we recruited you to this position. But what was it that attracted you to this vision, this symphony, this city, the great city of Chicago, that made this the place to be?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. And yeah, so again, I'm excited to be here as I continue to say, as I'm rounding out my first 100 days. Again, what really interested me, if you know anything about me, as a kid, I was known as Little Martin Luther King Jr. I'm old enough to when you can remember that they still showed that march on his birthday. And my parents made me sit and watch it on public radio, PBS, right? So I'm of that age. And so I've spent a lot of time in social justice. I spent a lot of time in the arts. I went to school to be a professional opera singer. And I started singing primarily because I wanted to inspire other Black kids that they could access this art form that seemed very foreign, right? So it's just a natural fit. I think if you talk to Maestro Freeman's son, I think he was really excited to see someone like myself continue to take on his father's vision. And so I take this. I take this very seriously, but know how to dance in the rain as well and have a good time. But I'm amped.
Maestro Freeman was the founder of Chicago Sinfonietta, and he had this vision. He had this vision that is culminating in this team, which is just absolutely amazing. Man, when you're putting together, and let's talk a little bit about what you're presenting this year, because it's tremendously exciting. When you're putting together a season, what is your theme? What is your sensibility that causes you to choose particular works, particular guest performers, that causes you to shape a symphonic experience that is so diverse and so interesting to new audiences that they're clamoring for tickets?
Thank you so much for having me on this wonderful program, and thank you for the search that resulted in Sidney coming to us. The programming is a complex process. If I may, talked about it in sort of 3 timeline. There are always artists that I continue to discover and put it on our wish list. We have way too big of a wish list for our small season, if you will. So that is the biggest challenge. And sometimes, even we wanted a certain guest artist, we have to wait for years between their schedule lined up with our venues availability. We perform in 2 venues, and each of them is in demand for various reasons. And so when it comes to guest artists, oh my gosh, I have I'm a kid in a candy store. I have so many that I want to showcase. So sometimes the program is driven by a guest artist repertoire, but sometimes it's driven by particular themes. We always have a narrative in each program, that is for sure. So I try to give the team and our marketing something that they can hold on to and everybody gets excited. And so, for example, the William William Dawson Negro Folk Symphony that I've championed. We have performed this season. This coming season will be my third time conducting it. And there are very few conductors who can say that within the last, 12 years I championed it 3 times with Chicago Sinfonietta and multiple times with other orchestra. And it's a work that's a hidden gem. And sometimes it's, I keep my ear on the ground. Sometimes I discover it. Sometimes it's through our interns, sometimes through our recommendation of musicians, other musicians, our wonderful board.
Well, you're opening yourself to influence, right? I mean, that's right. That's where it starts. It's basically being open and not having your own preconception, right?
That's right. Any toy is fun for me. So any piece is good, and I may take a piece. So for example, we're doing the New World Symphony by Dvorak, which is an old canon, but we are celebrating Dr. Dan, who became the first surgeon to operate the first open heart surgery in the world. And I just thought we should celebrate that big time. It was in the same year, 1893, when New World was being composed. Dr. Dan was performing a miracle surgery in Chicago and later founded a medical school here. And so we tried to take things that maybe known, but we're going to definitely give it a spin, or we're going to take things that's completely new. For example, Clayton Stevenson, whom I have helped to nurture, and he is one of the the first African-American laureate out of the Van Cliburn competition. So we're going to have Clayton play Rhapsody in Blue, but we have commissioned one of our violists to write a new orchestra work that is inspired by Miles Davis's music. And we are going to create a new piano piece for Clayton to take it as a companion piece to Rhapsody in Blue. And so we always try to, do things a little bit outside the box so the world can benefit from that.
That's so fabulous. And Wendy, you have such a career in both the commercial space and in the sports space in terms of inclusion. Talk a little bit about the connection between inclusion in the arts and the connection between inclusion at a place like McDonald's. Right? You don't think about symphony orchestra McDonald's. You don't think about Major League Baseball and the Sinfonietta. But you bring those two experiences both. So describe those experiences, but also describe your view of how American civil society across various divisions, commercial divisions, artistic divisions, educational divisions, how should this actually function? How should we function as a country?
Mark, you had mentioned Maestro Freeman, and I have to say, to pick up where Sidney suggested MLK in the spirit of it. I think about those two and the dream that they both have, and I think Sinfonietta right now is experiencing that dream. We are the fulfillment of that. And when I think about the other opportunities I've had in business, working with various enterprises and franchises, working with Sinfonietta, having the blessing and the distinct opportunity to be a part of the board, just try to keep it all together before Super Sidney came to take us to the next level. Working very closely with Mei-Ann has really been a dream of mine, because it literally has been the most inclusive experience I've ever had. I have not seen it operationalized where the benefit of all is a participation of all. And what is delivered at our concerts, what is delivered as a part of the Sinfonietta experiences, is the most welcoming, most enriching experience that I've had. And you do not have to be classically trained or even know anything about classical music, but I have seen people universally experience the joy that we do. And literally, with Sidney's leadership and Mei-Ann's delivery will have people experience is something that penetrates the heart and the soul like nothing I've seen. And so having that corporate experience is exciting to me, because what they all have in common, whether it's MLB, whether it's McDonald's or Sinfonietta, they all are very uniquely enterprises that are dedicated to world-class talent, delivering for as wide of an audience as possible, but creating something so unique and sustainable, people want more.
This is such a fantastic summary, right? What you're saying is that you want to have, whether you're McDonald's or whether you are a baseball franchise or whether you are any other business or school, you want to welcome, include all of these potential customers into the doors, into the experience, right? Your audiences reflect your stage.
They do. And I can't say I've had that experience. And Sidney and Mei-Ann have seen many more of the orchestra audiences than I have, but I have not seen anything quite like our audiences, and much less like our stage.
And McDonald's customers reflects McDonald's workers, right? And those sitting in the stadiums at Major League Baseball games or watching on television, they reflect the teams, right? What you're saying is that is really where everything comes together, right, Sidney? Where you, when you are marketing the work that Mei-Ann and her team presents on that stage, you are actually looking at your audience cohorts and you're saying, come on in, be a part of this. Let's do something, Mei-Ann, right? Let's do something that will interest you from where you sit. Sidney, talk a little bit about how you think, because you came in as a fundraiser. I mean, you know how to connect with different people at different giving levels and so on. Talk a little bit about how you see the audience and connecting, your task of connecting everyone in and around Chicago to Mei-Ann and her team's art.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it takes us again back to that radical vision of Maestro Paul Freeman, again, who, if we didn't say, was the first African-American conductor to lead a major orchestra here in the U.S., right? And that vision was to create an orchestra that really reflected the diversity of the world. From day one, this organization really has stood in inclusion, right? It is at the heart of who we are, inclusion and equity. Not just about the stage, but who gets to experience and shape classical music, right? I think what I am looking for, again, I will say this till the end. This CSO, they belong to the world, but we, Chicago Sinfonietta, is the most diverse orchestra in the world that is here in and lives and breathes in Chicago. So it's Chicago Symphony, right? And we are really going to, again, how do we get to them? Not necessarily always they come to us. We're going to find better ways in that. We're going to experience that this season, where we go to 5 different venues throughout Chicago, right? And begin to think about how we can, through our onstage presence, right? We have these 10 concerts. How can we use them to also uplift and in other communities, right? I'd love to explore the meet your musician at intermission, to where the audience can come up and really get to know our musicians as human beings. And I've seen where that connection can truly happen, just from meeting Lindsay or Ed or Seth or Laura at the apron of the stage. It becomes I'll see you next concert, right? And so that takes me to, while other orchestras really focus on tradition, we probably have and will continue to lean in innovation, is what I really think about. And we've been doing this work for decades. And I'll just say this, because I was just having this conversation, that in my experience, when it really comes to this social justice meeting the arts, especially when there are Black and brown people at the center of it, folks often want to dance to the rhythm, but don't want to feel the blues, right? So they celebrate the wins, but when the weight comes along, the people leave the dance floor. So Chicago Sinfonietta needs and really deserves partners who will stand with us now in the midst of these challenges. Again, this radio station is a way to get our message out there, just so that people don't leave us in this work that needs to happen when the moments of the spotlight kind of dim, let's say, right?
Man, I see there is classical music and orchestral forms hiding in plain sight all over the place. I see it in the video games, right? That kids are using. I see it in film. When I look at Zimmer's amazing work, right? I see it in these corners, these nooks and crannies. I see it in popular artists breaking into Bach on a guitar solo on a rock stage. I see all these different elements here. And it seems to me that what you're doing is you're exposing people in this very curated way, because you can only present a few works of all the marvelous works that are available in your candy store. How do you select particular works? I know that some of it is about what is available at a particular time and particular artists and so on. I understand all that. But when you actually have a choice, and you do have to choose between works that you present, are you thinking about the audiences for those works? Are you thinking about the whole and how it fits together, the story that you wish to tell? Are you thinking about the artists that you wish to advance? What is your process?
All of the above. And so thank you for sharing the complexity. So for example, we're starting the season with Bollywood and beyond. That I have wanted to embrace that for a long time. And who is helping us making it come true was actually a former Freeman Conducting Fellow. Roger Kalia actually went and designed a program called Symphony Masala. And so first half, and he honors his own Indian heritage by creating this program that he's taking around the country. So I welcome him back, and then I'll conduct the second half, reminiscent of the pieces that Maestro Paul Freeman passed the baton to me, was during a East Meets West program. I came as a guest conductor and not really knowing that I would become the future leader of the group. And so this is a dream come true right here. Some project takes many years to shape up, but our new holiday program, for example, we have another wonderful former Freeman Conducting Fellow, Kedrick Armstrong, just literally had a mediatric, rise in the industry by being appointed the new music director of the Oakland Symphony. So he didn't just start his tenure with a small orchestra. He became the successor to Michael Morgan, who have taken diversity to such an incredible level with the Oakland Symphony and during his tenure there. And so we have Kedrick come back. not only we get to showcase another wonderful former fellow, but he's going to continue to shape up our new holiday programs with incredible, diverse composers. And it's sometimes I have to ask myself, what are we doing different from any other orchestra? And to Sidney's and Wendy's wonderful points earlier, I'm actually excited that we become again a unicorn in the industry. And I'm proud to continue to champion this work regardless of what's going on around us, because there's so many great pieces that needs to be discovered, needs to be championed. And so, for example, Open Heart, that same program with the Dvorak, we're going to have a cellist, Jeff Ziegler, who's a dear friend, to bring to our audience for the first time a piece we commissioned during the pandemic, by Joel Townsend. It's called Breath Burn, really referencing the police violence. And it's a work that I think secretly being recorded by one of the top cellists. I think the recording is being released. I'm not going to say the name so I don't get in trouble, but that's the impact of Chicago Sinfonietta. We created something that other people say, oh my gosh, this is a hidden jewel. Let me shed more light on it. And so I really see ourselves. So let me reference real quick. 2019, we released Project W. 5 women composers, from Florence Price to Jennifer Higdon to Rina Esmail, Jessie Montgomery, and Clarice Assad. So Jessie Montgomery has since become the composer in residence with Chicago Symphony. Rina Esmail and Clarice Assad are being demanding all of the work. And in fact, Rina's new work is being premiered by the Chicago Symphony this coming weekend at Ravinia Festival. And so the fun part for me is when I recorded these 3 living composers and Florence Price, which was just being rediscovered, that these composers weren't on so many orchestras' radar, or they weren't as famous, let's put it this way. And then nowadays, after the Project W, I haven't checked Spotify for a month. But a month ago, the Florence Price Dances in the Kim Break first track received over 2.1 million plays.
One of the things that you're saying here is, if you look at the history of art marginalized women for a really long time, certainly marginalized artists of color for a really long time.
That's right.
There's a fabulous exhibition right now at the Metropolitan Museum, which basically gives due to African artists who were unnamed, but these individual artists are now being identified and being recognized for the quality of their work. Wendy, I've been seeing your smile grow and grow and grow as Mei-Ann has spoken and as Sidney has spoken. And since we're coming to the end of our time here, let's concentrate on a couple of different things. First of all, I would like to talk a little bit about the whole idea of Chicago Sinfonietta in your neighborhood, that program. I would like to talk a little bit about the accessibility and the pay what you can approach. So Wendy, you're a person who has worked with organizations that have focused on profit. And this is an organization that needs to remain financially strong, but profit is not the end goal. So talk a little bit about how you as a business person and your fellow board members try to balance that and contribute to that balance in your governance. And you hold the right line where the organization remains both philanthropically oriented, but also remains financially strong.
Mark, we have the beauty of having one of the most unique origin stories in this world of orchestra in terms of Maestro Freeman. And so first of all, our perspective is we have to keep to that mission. I also have learned that in this value system of diversity, equity, inclusion, or whatever folks choose to call it, has always been a profit opportunity. So the ideal that you can't have two at the same time is a misnomer. Bottom line, the business case for diversity is loud and proud and very profitable. And folks who have not had the opportunity to economically make it viable means they're missing it. They're missing people.
And isn't it arguable that since the Second World War in particular, American prosperity has actually been built upon the greater inclusion of consumers and of workers who are capable of building? I mean, that's what this is about. It's really, the prosperity is dependent on our ability to take the best and just include the best and cultivate the best from people who perhaps don't have means, but that is our future workforce. Those are our future leaders, right?
Absolutely. That's why it's so important to tap into the youngest of our future audience and our future talent, as well as those who've grown up in this classic world. And it's really juxtaposing those 2 points of view and marrying them to all the innovation and all the success that Sidney and Mei-Ann are going to create.
And Mei-Ann, could you talk a little bit about your Artist in Residence program, the Freeman Fellowship program, and other programs that are there to cultivate new audiences, new artists, and give them a platform for how you already have spoken to a number of your performers these seasons. But talk a little bit about how you select people for this fellowship in this particular symphony.
Well, let me just say the Freeman Fellowship, it used to be called Project Inclusion, was really founded by our beloved Maestro Paul Freeman in 2008. And when I took over the tenure in 2011, we just continued to expand to include not only instrumentalists, but conductors, and later also composer, administrators. And at one point, we produced one of the biggest class of fellows of color in the country. And so the selection process is a little bit more, we used to have a very formal selection process, but I also find that, as I guess around 20 to 25 orchestras a year, I'm keeping my tab on, young musicians of color, instrumentalists. I try to tell them about the Chicago Sinfonietta fellowship program if they were coming to Chicago to study or to be a freelancer. If conductors, I keep tabs of who they are, and I reach out to cultivate the talents as I see. I'm proud to say that I have launched close to 20 young conductors of colors into the world with real careers. And this is no joke, going from Kedrick being music director of Oakland to many music director. Michelle DeRusso just got named the new music director of Delaware. Taichi Fukumura just got named not only music director of Illinois Symphony, he is now the new assistant conductor of the world famous Cleveland Orchestra. And so we are hitting the world's radar with these young talents, and many of our instrumentalists are also winning positions in the country. The artists in residence really came out of the pandemic time with Sidney's predecessor, Blake Anthony Johnson, and I wanted to shed more light on a particular artist. And at that point, it was Catherine Bostic, who became the first African-American woman being accepted into the Academy. And so now she has become an Emmy nominated. Her new film score, which actually feature our wonderful cellist, one of the best New York New York best-selling authors. They just made his novel into a film. And so we love that we were able to bring Catherine Bostic even further into the spotlight. And then later on, we have artist in resident, Grammy Award-winning producer and composer Peter Cottontail for 23-24 season and 24-25 season. We have Sherman De La Thomas, social media Chicago historian. And so we are trying to seek out these wonderful individuals that if we can, share their wonderful works with the world, that's what we do.
That is, the joy is so infectious. Sidney, I'm going to give you the last word since we're coming to the end. If you had your wish list, let's make a wish, right? If you had your wish list, how would you like the community to support you? How would you like the Sinfonietta to evolve to be of even greater support for Mei-Ann and the entire cohort of artists who contribute to the symphony? How would you like that what would your wish be?
So again, I mean, I think you've hit part of it is awareness, right? But that has a lot to do with making sure that this organization tells its story as many different ways as possible. And so again, with additional funding, certainly we could put bus ads in Chicago, whatever. But it's really, I think, at the heart, we've got to own our story. I say this all the time. Secrets don't sell seats. So we do not need to be a secret to the world, to Chicago, right? And I think, again, part of what I want to do is put us in places and spaces and go to the community. We're going to get kind of creative in how we do that. Again, I don't want to say how just yet, but I do have some ideas around that. I think it is going to be important for us. I know it sounds very pedantic, but transportation is expensive. That is a big barrier to young people getting to concerts. It just is. And I tried every which way when I was even in New Jersey to figure that out, to the point I went to New Jersey Transit, but like New Jersey, they're chartered, that they cannot do that. It couldn't be a private busing opportunity. So transportation is key. And for us, what then we would also have to do is find ways to have programming during the day and in the city of Chicago to meet them where they can. Because again, there are many parents who cannot take Saturday night off, pay the money to have the babysitter or just take off and come to a concert. So we've got to leverage the internal structures and systems that we do have in order for that to happen. And then I think there are other ways in which we can educate. I love that. I was really excited that we were doing the program with Dr. Dan, because there's so much around health and wellness and the importance of that, and how that's a whole vertical we could go down, right?
This is such an important point that you're making. Access to the elite, access to elite institutions, access to elite artists, access to elite experiences should not just be for the elite. It should be for everyone. And what you're saying, Sidney, is that in order to make it for everyone, you have to deal with, you said it, very pedestrian issues, like the cost of transportation and babysitting and those kinds of things. So that's an amazing thing to think about, is making elite not just for the elite.
Yes. I mean, I was just saying to someone yesterday, I was really fortunate that I started private voice lessons in 7th grade. And now I also went to school full time, and I started washing dishes at 15, right? To pay for those lessons. I would ride my bike. If you know anything about Florida, you really need a car, but I would ride my bike through the streets to get to my voice lesson. That's not everybody. That can't be everybody. But again, from my experience, it's our job as a community and a society to remove as many barriers to access. I can tell you who Miss Thomas was. She was my elementary school music teacher, and Miss Shoemaker, who was my junior high. And I went to Stetson because of her. So it's important that we meet and get the arts as early as possible. And what I have heard is that here in Chicago, the young people are getting instruments in their hands too late. They're getting it in high school or way too late. We need to find ways. And for me, the Chicago Sinfonietta is, for me, we need to be a true resource to the community to help break any of those barriers that the institutions who have the infrastructure, whether that's a university, whether that's the Hyde Park Youth Symphony, whether that's the Hyde Park Suzuki, who's led by one of our violinists, Lucinda. How can we be a resource and natural resource for the arts and education and social community of Chicago? That once we start acting in that way, I think we'll start probably solving more of problems here in Chicago.
Sidney, talk a little bit about how the organization functions within the community and the debt that you actually owe the community for support of the Sinfonietta's whole philosophy, for developing that philosophy and for developing its repertoire.
I think the one thing I wanted to make sure I did was thank the South Side Friends and our West Side Friends. They've been instrumental from the beginning. It was Maestro Paul Freeman in homes being guided by those South Side Friends and our West Side Friends from the beginning, helping bring his vision to life with fundraisers as well.
Sinfonietta has always been a symphonic community. It is really that community perspective and purpose that got us started, and it really has sustained Sinfonietta throughout. So as Sidney mentioned, Southside and Westside Friends have been integral parts of literally the foundation of Sinfonietta and will be a part of our future.
What a wonderful vision. Sidney Jackson, CEO of Chicago Sinfonietta, Mei-Ann Chen, Maestra, Music Director, and Wendy Lewis, Chair-Elect and founder and CEO of Wendy Lewis, LLC. Thank you so much for helping us to understand your great works. Thank you so much for clarifying your philosophy about serving the Chicago community and the communities beyond. Your internationalist perspective, Mei-Ann, is fabulous. Your ability to bring these diverse artists together in an intersectional way where people are performing each other's works and adding to them and improvising on them, creating new works based on them. It's just such a wonderful, wonderful experience for me to learn from you. Please thank your donors, your staffs, your board members, your community, your artists, man. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for your insights.